In this video, we're going to answer the common question, should you enlist in the military or become an officer going through college? We're going to talk about pros and cons of both, and at the end, I'm going to wrap it all together and give my thoughts on what I would personally do based on where I'm at in life and what my long-term goals are. So let's dig in. We're going to lead out talking about enlisting in the military. So some of the pros for that are that it's quick, right? Like it's a quicker entry. You don't have to go through college. You don't have to do all that stuff. You can just join at 17 with parental consent or at 18 on your own signature. You could theoretically graduate high school and go to boot camp the next day if the timing allowed, which means you don't have to wait for things and you can get that early start on earning those benefits, getting some life experience, seeing the world. And if you just don't really feel like going to college, like I didn't when I was leaving high school, this is a good option. Number two is that hands-on life experience, right? College is great, but I don't know that you could argue it gives you a ton of real world like life experience when compared to the military side where yes, you're getting real world life experience. You're seeing the world, you're doing hard things, you're working a job, you're showing up to work, you're having responsibilities and taking leadership and all of that, and you're gonna get to jump right into that. Which leads right into the next benefit, which is job training. You're going to get hands-on learning a skill. You'll go to a job school and then you'll get to just do the thing. So instead of doing classroom time at college, you're getting that hands-on time to actually execute and work on these things and master your job and get more and more proficient in these skill sets, building that skill and learning a trade, maybe even working on your apprenticeship certifications and all these other things while currently serving and getting paid and all the benefits, which is wonderful in my opinion. And then we've got tuition assistance, which pays for your college while you're in. So if you go the officer side, unless you're NROTC or a military academy, you're taking on student loans and or paying for college with the hope that maybe the military will reimburse some of that when you commission. Not a guarantee, depends on how you do it. And then on the enlisted side, you can go to school for free while you're in. I use tuition assistance to get an associate's degree. I have friends who have associates, bachelor's, master's. I even have a friend who has a doctorate degree from their tuition assistance. And the tuition assistance doesn't even cut into your GI Bill, which you can then use for a 4-year degree down the road or give to your spouse or dependents, which is wonderful. And then you can always execute the promotion within. We call these guys Mustangs, those who went from enlisted to officer. So not only are you going to get the career progression of going from E1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those promotions, pay raises, responsibilities, leadership, and all that in that first 4 years, but you have the option later to commission. There's a lot of different programs. In the Marine Corps, we have one that's probably the most common called the MECEP program, which is the Marine Enlisted Commissioning Education Program, which basically means as a active duty guy, you would get orders to a college for 3-4 years, however long it takes to finish your degree. And you would be a full-time student while being paid as an enlisted guy, still getting promoted as an enlisted guy. And then once you graduate, you commission as an officer and you come back and you do a tour in the Marine Corps. Every branch of service has their version of this. And there are a couple of other ways that you can also commission. You can do it through the reserves. There's a lot of stuff, but that's kind of the most common where you get paid essentially to go full-time and study as your job and then commission when you get back after your degree, which is awesome because you're not taking on student loan debt, you're not having to take on a second job, and your job is legitimately to show up and be a student, which is just really cool. And so there's a benefit to the fact that you can always go from enlisted to officer as long as you have proven a decent, record, like you haven't been a schmuck while in the service. You can't go from officer to enlisted, and I think that's kind of a cool distinction. And then on the enlisted side, we always kind of looked up to those Mustangs, which is the guys who were enlisted first because they get us. They understand that with the job training, you're the boots on the ground, turning the wrench, running the gun, doing the thing, rather than the high-level office planning side. And so they get those people who are boots on the ground a little bit better because they were one. And then I would like to think that on the officer side, you still have that brotherhood and camaraderie, but I don't think it's as intense. I don't think it's the same as going to boot camp, going to combat training, going to your unit with some of these guys and girls, and being the guy, the trauma bonding, I call it trauma bonding, but the shared hardship of that training while you're an enlisted guy or girl and doing all these hard things together and building out that brotherhood and camaraderie and living in the barracks together and eating, blood, sweat, tears, eating, breathing, sleeping together, as opposed to on the officer side, it's a little bit more independent. And I don't know that they get the same kind of, we call it esprit de corps, spirit of the corps in the Marines, but that brotherhood camaraderie as the enlisted side does. Now, some of the cons. You are going to have a lower starting pay on the enlisted side. Now, that pay will increase, but the officers admittedly get paid more. And again, you can always commission to the officer side, but I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's a huge con because if you're coming in making 40, 50, 60K a year, and we're not here to talk about military pay, I've got videos on that too, as an 18-year-old, vice paying to go to college, that sets you up for success in a really good way. So even if it's a little bit lower pay, it starts earlier, which means it compounds faster and it can set you up for success at an earlier time. There's also a little bit more limited leadership opportunity and authority until you get to the E6, 7, 8, 9 level of the enlisted side. You're not going to be in charge of as many people as you would on the officer side. So for some people, that's a con. You don't have as much influence on policy, meaning you're not going to be able to like shape the military branch that you're in as an enlisted guy at any amount near the officer side. That said, until you get to the really high officer side, you're not shaping a ton of policy either. So, you know. And on the enlisted side, it might take you a little bit to get some of those promotions and get some of that authority and respect, as opposed to like the officer side, you get dropped in as a lieutenant, and you've already got some authority and respect. Admittedly, we all kind of joke about butter bars, like second lieutenants, like, new guy. But, you know, the enlisted side is a little bit different beast in that realm. Now, on the officer side, some of the pros are things like, higher pay, and it's not necessarily higher benefits, but higher pay, and you get all that earlier. And plus, like, as an officer, you're automatically going to get approved for BAH and being able to live off base, whereas an enlisted guy, there might be a little bit of time there before you're eligible for BAH, which means you may live in the barracks for a bit, while an officer would be able to come in and house hack or use the VA loan right away. Although I say that, you could be 4 years into the enlisted side and already have done it, while the officer is just coming out of college and not have done it yet. So tomato, tomato. Officers are going to be in that leadership role. They're going to be up front. They're going to be the ones making decisions and running the show. And so if you really value that leadership and being the guy in the front, you know, that could be a valuable thing for you because it will take you some time to earn that on the enlisted side. Now, there's a lot of career growth opportunities on the officer side as well, including, you know, future schools that can send you to go earn your master's or doctorate. And you actually get to go to a bunch of different schools that kind of play more towards the leadership side than the job side. So if you prefer that over like becoming a subject matter expert in your job, the officer side is winning there with pros. And we kind of already touched on the advanced education opportunities with some of these schools, and then there's a broader impact that you can make because you're going to be in charge of more service members as an officer, and so there's some opportunity there for some impact to be made. Now on the con side, there's higher responsibility for the officer corps as well. So like you're still Nick the new guy, and you've got a ton on your shoulders because instead of being like an E1, E2, E3, learning the thing kind of just jokingly like 18, 19-year-old new guy, you're a commissioned officer, now you're in charge, you're running the like you're held to that higher responsibility standard, and that can be a little intense for people right off the bat. It is a longer commitment generally for the officer corps. The enlisted usually is 4 years, and the officer side, depending on your job, can be anywhere from 4 to 8, maybe even 10 years if you're like a fighter pilot, I think, that you have to give back for all that training. And so if you're just testing the waters and you don't plan on making it a career, the enlisted side has a 4-year contract, and that could be a little bit easier to stomach than you might be in your 30s by the time you leave from being an officer. There is definitely more bureaucracy on the officer side. There's a lot more politics and kissing hands and shaking babies, or kissing babies, shaking hands, whatever, that goes into the officer side than the enlisted side. And so if you don't want to play the political game or the bureaucracy side, that might not be a great move for you either. The entry requirements. It's a lot harder to get into the officer corps. Like it's not a guarantee that you're going to be an officer with the enlisted side as long as you don't quit and you don't like fraud your way in and you don't get hurt. Even if you get hurt, I mean, you're probably fine. You're going to make it. So there is a chance that you get weeded out on the officer side, and that that can be a struggle for some people. And then also like delayed field experience. Like if your goal is just to like leave town and go see the world and maybe get into combat and like whatever, the enlisted side gets you there much faster. 6 months to a year from the day you go to boot camp, you're at a unit ready to rock and roll, maybe even faster. Whereas on the officer side, you got the full amount of time commitment for college, and then you've got, the schools for becoming an officer, the schools for your job. I mean, it's a five-year thing probably before you get to your first unit from high school. So that's a lot more of a time commitment to get to your end goal. We're going to talk through some of my thoughts on this. I think you should weed through some of this stuff to help make that decision. Like if you already have a college degree, then the officer side is probably a little bit more appealing because you've already done that commitment and you could go into the officer side without having to spend time in school. If you haven't, and you don't want like to go and get student loan debt and like take on a degree right this moment, then the enlisted side's better because you can jump in and you can always get the educational benefits on the back end. If you prefer the idea of being the guy up front running the show, leadership, like the face, as opposed to the guys like doing the work, then the officer side might be for you. But if you like that on-the-job training, OJT, and like getting your hands dirty and like actually shooting the machine guns and running the drills and turning the wrenches and driving the trucks, then the enlisted side might be more for you. I would say if you're planning on making this a career and doing like 30, 40 years and maybe even getting into politics afterwards, like depending on your goals, then on the long term, the officer side might be the better route. The enlisted side offers you a bunch of opportunities, but a lot of that stuff is kind of at the lower level leadership level until you've been in for 10 years and you've started to take on some real rank. Whereas the officer side, you'll get those opportunities, you'll get groomed for that stuff a lot earlier. So I've always jokingly referred to the enlisted versus officer debate as blue-collar worker versus white-collar worker, but I really do think that kind of fits. If you really want that tangible, hands-on, brotherhood, close-knit, like fraternity side, the enlisted side probably wins. And if you're wanting to like make policy and lead and be kind of the face of the organization and like not get your hands dirty as much, then the officer side might be the better bet. And I'm not saying officers don't ever get their hands dirty. Don't get offended there, sir. But like, that's kind of the reality. Again, you can always commission later. Like you can go enlisted, change your mind or decide and then commission later. And all the enlisted guys respect Mustangs a lot more coming out the gate because they know where we've been. Personally, I would join the officer side if I already had a degree and like knew that was what I wanted to do. If I could go to a military academy like the Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, West Point, whatever, and like have that full experience, or if I had like a really specific skill set, like I wanted to be a pilot, a lawyer, a doctor, a chaplain, you know, something like that where it requires a specific skill, a specific degree, and that is the job that you want to go for, then potentially the officer side could be the better route. And otherwise, I would probably enlist first, figure everything out, get that experience, and then if I really loved it, go officer side. That's actually what I was going to do. I had a package ready to submit for the MECEP program, and ultimately I ended up trying out for Special Forces instead, which is our MSOB, MARSOC, our ANS, you know, assessment and selection program for the MARSOC Raiders. And unfortunately, I got injured and had to drop on request and didn't make it. And then I ended up being a recruiter and like life all worked out. But I chose the Special Forces assessment and selection over dropping my package to go commission. But I really did think about commissioning after that first, 4 years in the Marine Corps. So I'm going to just read this quick list. I bulleted this out and I'm just going to read this real quick as like kind of thoughts and then we'll be good. So you should enlist if you want to join quickly after high school, you enjoy hands-on technical work, you're looking for personal growth and discipline, you value tight-knit, boots-on-the-ground roles, or you want to explore options before committing to that longer-term officer side. And conversely, you should probably commission if you have a plan to earn a college degree, you enjoy the leadership planning and responsibility roles, you aim for long-term leadership role and like a long-term career, you want strategic influence and the higher pay right off the bat, and you're confident about managing and guiding others. So hopefully reading that out wasn't too weird for y'all, but that's kind of the like super synopsis. So I hope this helped, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. If you're currently serving or you did serve, why did you choose enlisted or officer? Do you think it was the right decision? What would you do differently? What advice would you give to people who are considering this? Comment it down below. Let's hear it. And if you're looking at doing it, which one are you leaning towards and why? Let's talk it out. I'm curious to see what the disparity is here, and I really hope this helped clarify for some of y'all that decision. Ultimately, it needs to be your decision. You have to be okay with it, and you're going to crush it no matter which way you go. And if you're still debating whether to go active duty or reserves, check out this video I filmed the other day for y'all, which will help answer that question, because those two seem to be two of the most common questions I get. I hope you got a lot out of this video. I love you guys. Have a great day.